delighted today to be speaking to Graeme Saggers, who's the head of tax at Nolands here in Cape Town. Welcome, Graeme.
Thank you, David. Thanks for having me, and welcome to Cape Town.
Wonderful. So looking forward to seeing you at the networking dinner tomorrow night.
Yes,
for those who've not had the chance to meet you before, it'd be really interesting to hear a little bit more about your background and also what you do at Nolands.
Okay, excellent. Thanks. So I'm the head of tax at Nolands. So Nolands is a significant auditing firm in South Africa. We've got offices all around South Africa and are on an expansion internationally as well. So we've got offices in Mauritius, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Nigeria, Switzerland, as well as London. I head up the tax consulting arm of Nolands. We're a team based out of Cape Town, and we handle all aspects of tax types, consulting as well as disputes. And by the nature of where we're situated and our types of clients, we do a lot of advisory work on inbound investments into South Africa. We're part of a network of accounting and law firms where we manage to generate a lot of interest through there, as well as a lot of outbound investments, a lot of immigration type work. Immigration is obviously quite topical in South Africa. So we do heaps of immigration work. For me, I got into the tax space. I'm a chartered accountant. I'm also now a chartered tax advisor. I did my master's in tax at the University of Cape Town, where I now also lecture on the tax honours and master's in South African tax program. So I'm a person who's deeply committed to the tax industry in South Africa, and anyone who knows me knows that we're really on a drive or intention. The tax industry in South Africa is very strong and is going through quite an interesting phase at the moment, where it's trying to, I guess, distinguish itself as separate from accounting and law. We tax specialists. We're something a bit unique, I guess.
Great. And just focusing on that inbound piece first, I mean, who is it that you might work with on inbound investment? Might be fund and institutional managers looking at assets in South Africa, private families based somewhere else, also looking at investment opportunities, or what kind of client might you work with on inbound investment? Yeah,
it's a mix. So we see a lot of fund type investments, and a lot of that, I mean, it's industry specific. So a lot of foreign investors coming in and looking at properties that in the real estate space would often more be individuals or families looking to invest in, so we'll help them get set up. But what we're seeing a lot of also is European-based companies, trading enterprises looking at putting branches or subsidiary offices in South Africa and kind of using South Africa as a springboard into the rest of Africa, because there's massive potential in Africa, as we all know. It's just making sure that you're kind of coming in the right avenue and getting the right advice in doing so.
I mean, is the government creating an environment for that foreign direct investment to come and attract, investment from overseas as well, for then investment into the region, do you see?
Look, they're doing their best, I think. I think the South African government is doing their best. I don't think they're getting it completely right, but what government is getting it completely right? Right? There is an intention or a need to make South Africa investor friendly and kind of position ourselves as the gateway into Africa. Obviously, Mauritius will always be a popular alternative as well, which is why we've got offices there, and there are very many South African based clients as well that will look to go into Africa via Mauritius. But yeah, certainly with the South Africa's always had a really strong audit kind of regulatory space and a strong banking space. So in that, I guess that gives investors comfort when going into Africa that they'll be safeguarded through quite strong regulations. Yeah.
And you mentioned your footprint of offices overseas. I mean, was that driven by clients actually going and expanding into, say, the UK or into Switzerland or into other territories, and your office network has kind of grown up through that demand for clients going overseas with successful concepts or looking to diversify?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, when we have our clients, we're a firm that's very much we base our whole firm persona around our client relationships. We develop really strong relationships with our clients, who are typically kind of clients for life. And so when our clients have a business objective or strategy, we need to be able to provide them with a solution. So a lot of our expansion has been led by our clients' expansions as well, and their success in new territories.
And what do you see of interest in the UK from here, both for business investment and real estate and lifestyle, but actually on the trade and business opportunity between the UK and South Africa? We just had a presidential visit coming to see King Charles. I mean, I think personally I find that hugely encouraging, because the UK has gone through Brexit, is going through difficult times, and actually we need to find great trading partners. Countries like South Africa can be part of that story. But what's your perspective from down here on the UK?
No, absolutely. So I mean, South Africa and the UK will always have a strong link. I mean, we really enjoy beating you guys in rugby as often as possible, but we'll always maintain a strong link. And certainly, in the individual space, a lot of the immigration work that we're doing is immigration to the UK. A lot of youngsters, as soon as they finish studies, will want to go and get some work experience in the UK. And so there's always has been and always will be a strong kind of individual move to the UK. But similarly, from an investment perspective, South Africans, from what I'm seeing in the market, do get a lot of benefit out of investing in UK real estate. You investing in a more kind of stable currency, and they see it as a safer investment opportunity. But yeah, from a UK inbound perspective, what we've actually seen quite a lot of, which is very encouraging, is South African entrepreneurs that have gone to the UK and built up successful businesses, and then are now bringing them back to South Africa and developing, bringing subsidiaries or branch offices out here, which is hugely encouraging.
I've also noticed through the pandemic and work from home, actually UK professional services businesses looking at offshoring is not a new concept, but actually because of the time zone, well-trained people here and opportunities, setting up branches and subsidiaries, offices in South Africa to actually service their clients. Is this something that you think is an opportunity, something you're seeing?
It's a huge opportunity, and to be like completely frank, I mean, it's something that we've even looked at from our own perspective, because in the tax advice space, I mean, especially when you're dealing with international tax, it's not really jurisdiction specific. I mean, it's understanding how to interpret tax treaties and looking at it. And when through my role at the University of Cape Town, when I see all the strong young professionals coming through, I mean, we've got an abundance of really good talent here. And then I speak to colleagues in sort of the global north, and everyone's talking about this kind of mass resignation and how they're struggling to retain staff. We've got the exact opposite problem. We're seeing really strong professionals, young professionals coming through. And I think that's aligned with other industries in professional services, where I feel South Africa can provide an option for outsourcing and that sort of thing. What we're also seeing just amongst our clients as well, with these South Africans that have moved to the UK now with the work from home opportunity, they're moving back to South Africa to be closer to their families and the climate that they enjoy, and then still providing that work. Obviously, that raises a whole lot of, as you would know from a tax perspective, we've got now permanent establishment risks and employees tax risks and all that, but we help them navigate that.
And there's also opportunities they might see. They might have been in the UK for 10 years, but then they see opportunities at home. They see an environment here where they can capitalise on. So it's interesting. Those opportunities are vital, aren't they, for growth of the economy?
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, in that, I know COVID's done a lot of things for us, but that to me is one of the positives, as it has expanded access to those types of opportunities and has helped us to generate new ideas and new ways of doing things.
Great. So, I mean, just zooming out and looking, I suppose, at the toolkit that you might have with business families who are looking at structuring options for succession. Obviously, there's a pretty broad toolkit here. Trusts are popular, common option, also use of insurance wrappers, perhaps. Pension planning, as well as the trust and corporate structuring that you might see of the business. I mean, what is it that you see what is it that you talk to clients most often about if they're looking at succession planning, protecting assets over the long term for the family? What are some of the things you might talk to them about?
Yes, I mean, we always have been and always will be a fan of trusts in stable jurisdictions that are governed well. I mean, we see from time to time all sorts of other products arriving in the market, and we approach them with caution. We like to really kick the tires on them before we see any of our clients invest in anything more creative or more exotic.
Because the trust can be bespoke and is understandable as to what happens at different junctures. You've got proven
Absolutely, yeah, and
competence with
yeah.
it.
So
Yeah.
a trust, from our perspective, it leads the way in many aspects. It can be flexible in terms of what the settlor or donor wishes, but as well, I mean, you've got your established case law, and they're easy to understand. The way they treat it from a South African perspective is hard written into our Income Tax Act. So it puts us in a much safer place in giving advice because we've got case law to rely on. We've got the legislation where we can confidently advise our clients on how this would be treated. It's not a matter of if this ended up in a dispute, we think it will be treated this way versus how SARS may look at it. So yeah, we'll always be a fan of offshore trusts when used in the correct manner. What makes it challenging from us from time to time, and this is again going back to the mobility of South Africans' perspective, is you see people will go through this process of setting up a really good trust that works for kind of the next generation, but you don't know where the following generation is going to be, and if they're going to be moving to jurisdictions that doesn't have favorable legislation in terms of how
they might end up in the US or
exactly US, Australia. So we kind of end most of our meetings saying like, when there's a big event coming up, then come back and talk to us because we need to be able to plan well in advance.
And I mean, is control of the settlor, I mean, in whatever jurisdiction, this is quite a pertinent issue, isn't it? With a wealth creator that's built a business, has these succession planning issues, they then have to understand the parameters on which they give those assets into a new structure. I mean, is there scope to bespoke, to give control to settlors to some degree, or how do you manage that conversation with people around what they're going to be permitted to do going forward with the assets they donate into new structure?
No, I mean, I think that's the most difficult conversation to have, right? I mean, you've got someone
anywhere in the world, I think, using trust
I think
structures.
so, yeah. And I mean, South Africans, as I think most people are, I mean, especially when you built up this business, the idea that you're giving away control is very difficult to fathom or understand, which is why I guess in a certain way, Mauritius has ended up being quite popular because people just see it as like that kind of extra bit closer that we can go there. And Mauritius has its advantages. Channel Islands has its advantages. We when faced with an idea of jurisdiction choice, we really look at all of them and see what's going to suit the family best. But yeah, definitely the idea of handing over control can be a very difficult conversation to have. And yeah, similarly, I think in that we start looking at ideas of protectors and that sort of thing, and I think they still have their place in certain circumstances. Obviously, that changes the way the trust is or the trust deed is drafted and managed to a certain respect. But yeah, we'll look at whatever safeguards can be put in place that is going to enable the structure of the trust to meet the objectives of the family whilst still keeping them secure.
And would you divide between like the local asset, perhaps an operating business here, and international assets, a portfolio in Switzerland or property in London or something like that? I mean, do you see those dovetailing together in the way that structures are put together?
No, absolutely, yeah. So almost like a parallel structure, offshore versus onshore. I mean, South Africa at the end of the day is a developing economy. So what we're not wealth managers, but what we really try and talk to our clients about is looking at their kind of wealth at a global level rather than just at a South African level, because South Africans tend to really like kind of marketing their wealth according to the JSE, and they really like South African properties. And if you were a foreign investor, what percentage of your portfolio would you really have in a developing economy? So one needs to kind of look at it from that perspective. And then, just from a practical and exchange control perspective, it really helps kind of keeping in South Africa what you need in South Africa, and then taking the rest out and kind of managing it in a parallel type structure.
And I mean, what about beneficiaries? I mean, what kind of rights do they have to information? Do you see beneficiaries being kind of included in the conversation, or sometimes excluded because the settlor wants to keep things private for a longer time? I mean, what sort of things do you see as issues there that beneficiaries might have views on how the structure's managed or the professionals involved?
No, definitely. Yeah, I mean that comes up all the time, and I guess it depends on the family dynamics as well. To what extent beneficiaries are included or excluded. There's kind of this I found it especially in the last sort of amnesty or the special voluntary disclosure program that a lot of people tend to assume because you're doing something offshore, it's like dodgy or in the grey area, whereas it's not. It just needs to be managed appropriately. So people tend to think that they should keep their offshore affairs secretive or not to disclose too much, whereas we take the complete different approach. You be transparent, you have everything on your tax returns, you have records of it, your beneficiaries need to know where everything is and know what's going on in order to kind of manage things as everything moves through the generations.
And where the next gen are brought into that conversation, do you find that they are different in terms of their views on type of investments that should be made, or ways things are done rather than the previous, or are they actually facing the same challenges and are broadly in line? I mean, a lot is talked on about next gen and how those clients are different, but what do you see practically?
I don't see too much difference. I think if they're included in the conversation early and they can kind of understand the ethos or the environment to which the investments go, then I don't see too much. Look, a huge focus in most cases, especially when structuring offshore, is that people who have the means want to provide for the best possible education for the next generation. I mean, that comes through consistently. And so, I think that doesn't miss a beat. People want to study at the best possible university and get the best possible education they have. So that always comes through distinctly. I think when the next gen do start having a say in investments, I don't know if maybe South Africans are just more conservative, but we don't see anything too exotic or massive changes happening. Typically, the structure or the wealth has kind of stood the test of time. They've got the right professional advisors in place, and then they just keep it going as consistently as possible.
So the discussion around ESG and impact investing that's often going on in Europe obviously has a different flavour here, and I've spoken to a lot of people who said actually a lot of the business owners are doing quite a lot through their businesses to support communities they're part of. So it's done in a different style. I mean, would you say you see that also in terms of this the discussion that's going on in the professional community about different styles of investing?
I think definitely, yeah. So I mean, philanthropy in general in South Africa is a very big thing. So the various means through your investment portfolios you can contribute to philanthropy, but as well what you're referring to in the business space. I mean, there's so many corporate social investment opportunities available. Some are done, because businesses want to do them, and it's Mandela Day and all sorts of really good things. And then others are required to retain a certain BE level, Black Economic Empowerment level. So either way, it is happening, as you say, a lot in South Africa already. I think at a business level. A lot of people would say a lot is still not enough, and there's so much more that could be done and should be done. But yeah, I think it is, to your point, I think it is a part of a lot of the conversations already. So yeah, it is.
Okay, great. And on the tax dispute side, this is an area that you'll get involved in. I mean, what are some of the latest trends that you see from that, and with the South African Revenue Service? Where do kind of disputes tend to arise?
So with the new commissioner coming in, I mean, he's really invested a lot in technology, and so I mean, the tech they're using and the machine learning and their risk algorithms are really top notch, and so have invested a lot in tech as well as in expertise over the last few years. So I think they've really increased their audit capability, which obviously increases their dispute capability as well. There's
just more data flowing about.
There's much more data, and there's ways to understand it. I mean, I remember when common reporting standards were coming in, everyone was asking us if it's something we need to be worried about. And at that stage, SARS wasn't on such a strong footing, and we were looking at it going, they're going to have access to all this information, but do they have the resources to actually do anything with it? And at that stage, I don't believe they did. Whereas now we sort of seeing that they do. They've got the tech capabilities. They've got the people available with good quality people that can understand what information they're getting. So yeah. SARS have introduced this high net worth individual units that sits with the large business center, which is really working quite hard at understanding high net worth individuals, understanding their affairs. The intention is to assist them with their compliance, but obviously with that it means really looking at everything with a fine-tooth comb as well.
And does residency become part of that in the sense of families globally mobile spending time? How do they determine residence is often a key point for the tax liabilities that arise. I mean, is people's patterns of mobility a key part of often these kind of disputes as well?
No, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. And I mean, we a lot of our work, as I say, is in the immigration space, but it's really on answering questions of residency. And I mean, there was one law change that happened a few years ago, which really shook up the whole industry, and it related to how South Africans working offshore were taxed. And there's been a lot of bad press out in the market on that, a lot of kind of fear mongering. But what that law change has done is it's helped South Africans, or kind of forced South Africans to really understand what it means to be tax residents of a country and really go into depth with that topic. So yeah, we do a lot of work in that, and the way someone emigrates has changed in terms of updating your residency. So that has meant we do a lot of work in helping people understand their residency, looking at our different rules of residency, looking at the tiebreaker tests. And I mean, a great case that arose out of the UK in the last year was the Oppenheimer case, which has really gone into, other than just giving us a glimpse into what Oppenheimer's wealth looks like, it's really gone into depth in looking at your center of vital interests and understanding how you could spend so much time in another country but still be resident of your the original country. So it's
would they ever bring in a statutory residency test like we've had in the UK with a more of a sort of formulaic approach to residency, do you think, or would there's no appetite for that?
I don't think so. I mean, our residency tests have been around for so long, and it's really, it's really 3 tests. So it's your ordinary residence test, which is similar in a way to domicile. So that's your common law test. We do have a number of days tests, but it's actually extraordinarily generous. I mean, it effectively applies over a 6-year period, which is why we always say, I mean, in Cape Town as well, you see a lot of British and German people that every 5th year just go on an overseas cruise for a year because they're breaking that residency test. It's a very generous test. And then the third aspect is obviously your treaty, your tiebreaker test. So I don't know, and I'm surprised that we don't have a 1-year test that a lot of other countries have, but I don't know if they'll ever do that. I think they're so busy muddling their way through the how to declare your residency and all that at this stage that they just want to even that out firstly.
So we're coming to the end of 2022. I mean, next year, what are the key announcements or dates, things happening? Is there budget statements, there are different things? What are people going to be looking out for next year in the South African tax environment?
Well, so I mean, the most interesting thing immediately is that our corporate tax rate's coming down. So it's dropping from 28% to 27%, which is a big thing. Obviously, with capital gains tax being at an inclusion, so for corporates it's 80% inclusion in that. That means your effective capital gains tax rate has also come down. So linked with that, it's not always good news. There's also going to be a limitation on how much interest you can claim as a deduction, as well as a limitation on utilization of assessed losses, which a lot of countries have, which will be quite new to South Africa. So that's probably the big thing. From a revenue perspective, I mean, we always look out for February to understand, how we're going to fund our kind of growing expenditure base. And with our budget, I forget the percentage, but a massive proportion of our budget now is on interest, on funding government spending. So over the last few years, I think the last 2 years, we've actually exceeded our revenue forecast, which has been encouraging, which has meant tax rates haven't really gone up. With corporate rates coming down, I don't think rates on individuals and trusts will go up again. I'm notoriously bad at predicting these things, but I don't think I don't think they will. I think the focus from the South African Revenue Service is very clear, is that they rather want to target the existing tax base and make sure, if we can get everyone compliant, our access to revenue is obviously much bigger.
Okay, interesting. And finally, you're coming to the dinner tomorrow night.
Yes.
There's a lot of intermediaries going to be gathered here at the Mount Nelson. I mean, I imagine you work closely with a range of intermediaries in all sorts of locations, but who's that you find which kind of intermediaries do you find you work best with and closest with in building your business?
Okay, so I mean, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to be joined by two of my colleagues at the dinner tomorrow night. They'll be sitting at the Ombo table, who I think are one of the silver sponsors. Yeah, so we go years back with them, so we'll spend some time with them, and then I'm sitting with the Standard Bank fiduciary team. Good group of South Africans that have moved to Jersey and are helping Standard Bank grow there. So yeah, we're very much looking forward to catching up again.
Wonderful. Well, look, great to see you. Thank you so much for sharing your insight. We look forward to sharing this interview.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you.
The latest technical content delivered through global conversations with professionals for professionals.